The city evening moved like a crowded river. Cars rolled bumper to bumper, horns tapping in little bursts. A bus hissed to a stop and let out a breath of air that sounded like a sigh. People flowed around each other on the sidewalk, holding coffee cups, take-out bags, and phones that lit their faces. The sky was still bright, but the buildings made long shadows across the street. Officer Mark Reyes stood near the corner, one hand resting near his radio, eyes moving from the crosswalk to the storefronts and back to the road. It had been a long shift. He told himself to stay sharp, to keep reading the whole picture, to trust training over tiredness. He scanned the cafe windows out of habit. Inside, a barista tilted a metal pitcher and drew a leaf in the foam of a latte. Outside, a young couple laughed and took a selfie by the chalkboard menu. A delivery driver wheeled a stack of boxes toward the door, sneakers squeaking against the pavement. Then Mark saw a sudden change. A man in a dark jacket stepped out from the cafe with a paper bag and looked over his shoulder more than once. He was not just checking traffic. He was measuring distance. The motion was quick, then careful, then quick again, like a person trying to move without being noticed. A woman followed him out. She wore plain clothes and walked in a steady line, eyes fixed on the man, not on the crowd. Her focus was intense, narrow, all forward. She kept to his left rear quarter, the position people use when they want to track someone without walking side by side. Mark felt a small alarm go off in his head. He shifted his stance and stepped off the curb to get a better angle. The bus released another long sigh, blocking his view for a second. When the bus slid forward, he caught sight of the woman again. The man sped up. The woman matched him. The street noise rose and fell like a wave, and in that wave a fragment of tension curled tight. Mark's training gave him a list: watch the hands, watch the eyes, watch the space between people. The woman's right hand stayed open and low. Her left elbow tucked in near her ribs. Then, quick as a blink, her left hand moved toward her jacket. The motion was smooth and practiced, not frantic. He did not know her. He did not know the man. He saw only the shape of a situation, one person focused on another, crowd nearby, hand moving to a place where people often keep tools or weapons or sometimes ID. Every step he took to close distance narrowed his time to decide. He raised his voice over the traffic. "Ma'am. Stop." A horn blared. Tires squealed. A tourist bus rolled past, tall and loud, its engine roaring at the exact second he spoke. The big vehicle swallowed half his words and tossed the rest back at him. He saw the woman keep moving, eyes still forward. He felt the old fear tug at him, the fear of being too late rather than too early. He had been in a late moment once, months ago, and it kept replaying when he tried to sleep. Not here, not today, he told himself. He lifted his hand again. Police. Hands where I can see them. The syllables scattered in the air, chopped by brakes and engine noise and the rattle of the bus's windows. The man in the dark jacket glanced back and then melted into a slice of crowd moving toward the corner. The woman adjusted her path, still following. Mark accelerated. People noticed now. A few turned their heads. A chair scraped on the cafe patio. A lid popped off a coffee and bounced once on the ground. Mark's world narrowed to a fast picture: a left hand entering a jacket, a suspect slipping away, a cluster of bystanders in the background who did not yet realize they might be in the middle of something. He had a choice and almost no time to make it. His body moved the way training had taught it to move. He came in at an angle to avoid getting trapped directly behind the woman. He gave one more loud command that even he could barely hear over the traffic. She leaned forward to keep the man in sight. The next half-second felt both short and long. Mark saw her hand still moving, saw the corner of a leather case in the fold of her jacket, but he did not know what it meant in that instant. He reached. He used a single, controlled strike meant to interrupt motion and gain compliance. The crowd breathed in all at once. The woman went still, steadying herself with a hand to the pavement, eyes wide with surprise. Silence fell for a heartbeat after the hit, the kind of silence that follows a dropped plate in a busy restaurant. Then sound rushed back: the bus's engine, a child asking a question, a barista saying "oh no," someone's phone chiming with a new message. Mark felt heat rise in his face. He saw the man in the dark jacket use the distraction to slide around two pedestrians and disappear into the crosswalk light. He wanted to split himself into two people, one to go after the suspect, one to stay and secure the scene. He chose the second because the first duty was right in front of him. "Don't move," he said, voice tight but even. "Hands open." The woman did not reach for him. She did not shout. She lifted her chin and spoke clearly, even though her breath was unsteady. "I'm federal," she said. "Badge left pocket." The words landed like a switch being flipped in Mark's mind. He stared, not understanding at first. The same leather corner he had glimpsed slid now into full view as the jacket shifted. She did not reach for it again. She kept her hands where he could see them and waited. Mark swallowed. The city narrowed to that small square of leather. He crouched only enough to look without closing his eyes to everything else. The case was a credential holder with a shield and an ID behind clear plastic. The letters FBI were simple and impossible to misunderstand. He did not touch it yet. He called out on the radio, voice moving from chest to mouth in a straight line of duty. "Dispatch, this is Reyes. I need a supervisor and medical to my location. Possible federal agent involved." He gave the exact cross streets and a short, factual description. He did not add the sinking feeling in his stomach to the record. He stepped back to give the woman space and scanned the sidewalk for any fresh risk. People were watching now. A bystander held up a phone, recording from across the street. Another person had already stopped recording and was talking quietly to a friend. A little boy with a toy car froze with his mouth open. The young couple from earlier stood shoulder to shoulder, uncertain about whether to leave or stay. Mark made his voice calm, the way instructors told them to do when eyes were on them. "Everyone, please keep moving. Sidewalk is open." "Thank you." He looked back to the woman. "Ma'am, are you hurt? Do you feel stable standing up?" The woman took a slow breath and nodded. Her eyes were clear. She stood, careful and balanced, and kept her hands visible. "Special Agent Maya Brooks," she said, still calm, still steady. Undercover surveillance was in progress. The subject just moved east. She did not point. She did not argue or accuse. She simply laid out facts, as if they were working the same problem from two different angles. The respect in her voice was not warmth, but it was professional. That steadiness made the moment sharper for Mark, not softer. He found his words. "I'm Officer Reyes," he said. "I misread the situation. Medical is on the way. I'm sorry." The apology felt small next to the large mistake and also necessary, like putting out a traffic cone after a near miss. He keyed his radio again and shared a quick description of the fleeing man, flagging units 2 blocks over to keep their eyes open. He did not order a chase, because he was not the case lead and he did not want to compound one error with another. He kept his focus here. Time stretched as they waited for the siren that would mean paramedics, and the bigger sound that would mean his supervisor arriving. Mark stayed a half step back and a bit to the side, so the crowd would see her first, not him, if they looked again. He watched her posture. He saw the careful way she shifted her shoulders and the way she kept her gaze level. He saw that she was taking care not to escalate anyone else's emotions, including his. He took another breath and did what he had been taught to do when adrenaline made the edges of the world too bright. He named 3 things he could see, 2 things he could hear, 1 thing he could feel. He saw the cafe sign, the bus number, a pigeon that had landed near a dropped sugar packet. He heard the roll of a suitcase wheel and the soft beeping of a delivery truck backing up. He felt the weight of his radio mic against his shirt. A man stepped forward from the patio, hands slightly raised in a non-threatening way. "Officer, I got some of that on video," he said. His voice was cautious, not confrontational. "If someone needs it." Mark nodded and said, "Thank you, sir. A supervisor will arrive shortly and take your information." The man accepted that and stepped back. The crowd started to thin again. Busy cities do that. The first shock passes, and people drift back to errands and plans. Still, the air held a buzz, the way a room holds a note after a guitar string is plucked. Mark felt the mistake growing to its full size in his mind. He did not try to shrink it or explain it away. He made himself replay the last 3 seconds, the bus blocking sound, the hand moving, the angle of his approach, the strike. He checked that Agent Brooks remained upright and balanced. He checked that her breathing looked even. He asked again if she wanted to sit, and she shook her head once. "I'm fine standing," she said. "Let's keep the scene controlled." The phrase was plain, but it carried a clear message: take care of the ground under our feet first, then the wider circle. He thought of the man in the dark jacket. He thought of the bigger case the agent had just mentioned with so few words. He wondered if one move on a sidewalk could break months of careful work. He wanted to offer to help fix it, and also knew that offering anything while the situation was still hot would sound like trying to escape blame. So he kept to the necessary steps. He documented. He broadcast the basic suspect description. He set cones near the curb so the ambulance would have a clear spot to pull in. He asked the cafe manager to hold any outdoor chairs steady so no one tripped in the slow swirl of curious onlookers. A siren grew louder, steady and direct, not rushed, and then the white and red of the ambulance lights reflected off the cafe windows. Mark lifted a hand and signaled where to stop. The paramedics stepped out with a calm pace that made everything feel human again. He gave them a brief report in simple terms: single strike contact, patient standing and alert, identification presented after the fact. He did not add adjectives. He did not add guesses. He let the facts be the facts. As the medics approached Agent Brooks, she nodded to them and then looked once more at Mark. "Badge was in my left pocket," she said, and there was no anger in it, only a point of information. "I didn't hear the full command." The sentence reached into his chest and held there. It was a clean summary of why the moment had broken. Command not fully heard. Hand movement misread. The city's noise pressing on both of them at the same time. He opened his mouth to repeat his apology, then closed it. The ambulance crew began their questions: name, age, any dizziness, any vision changes, any pain, and she answered in the same calm voice. Mark took one step back and looked up the block in the direction the man had gone. The crowd had mostly cleared now. The bus that had swallowed his voice was already 3 intersections away, a rectangle of color moving into the next part of town. The sky brightened for a moment as the setting sun found a gap between buildings. It painted the cafe windows with a warm stripe, and then the stripe slid away. He looked at the badge again, felt the word horrified sit in his mind, and accepted it without fighting. He had made a mistake. He would own it. He would say so to his supervisor. He would say so in any review. But right now, in this minute, there was still a scene to hold together with care. He exhaled and did the next right thing, which was the only thing he could do. He secured the body-worn camera for evidence. He marked the time. He noted the position on the sidewalk. He kept his voice even when the patrol car with his lieutenant turned the corner and rolled to a stop. He did not try to explain first. He did not start with a defense. He started with the truth: a misread in a loud moment, a single strike delivered, a federal credential presented, medical requested, scene stabilized. As the paramedics continued their quiet checks and the lieutenant stepped into the space between them, Mark understood the day had split into a before and after. In the before, he was just tired and careful. In the after, he was a person who had to live with a decision made in half a second, and who would be judged by how he handled everything that came next. The ambulance team worked with calm hands. One medic spoke to Maya while the other checked her pupils with a small light. They asked simple questions: name, age, if she felt dizzy, if she had nausea, if she could track the light. Maya answered in even tones. Her voice was steady. She moved her neck slowly to test it and said she felt sore but clear. The medic pressed a soft ice pack into a thin sleeve and held it out. Maya placed it gently on the side of her face. The air felt cooler around them, as if the street itself had taken a breath. Mark stood a step back, giving space but staying near. He had already called for his lieutenant. He had already said the words I misread to the radio once. Saying them again would not change the moment, but saying them to the right people would matter. He kept his voice quiet and factual when anyone asked him for details. He did not try to add color. He did not try to remove it either. He watched the sidewalk thin as curious onlookers drifted away. The man with the phone who had offered his video waited with a patient look, ready to give his name when asked. A marked patrol car came around the corner. Lieutenant Ana Delgado stepped out. She was calm, measured, and she walked with purpose. Her eyes moved from Mark to Maya to the medics and back to Mark. A recap, she said, simple as that. Mark gave her the sequence in order: the crowd, the bus covering sound, the woman following a man, the hand movement, the command partly heard, the controlled strike, the federal credentials, medical called, scene stable. He did not hide his mistake. He also did not rush. Lieutenant Delgado nodded once. Body cam, she asked. Active, he said. Good, she replied. We'll secure it as evidence. She asked a few clean, follow-up questions and then turned to the medics. Status. The lead medic said, no sign of severe injury. We still recommend a hospital check. An unmarked dark sedan pulled to the curb. The driver flashed a small dash light and parked. A man in a plain suit stepped out, followed by a woman with a tablet bag. The man showed a credential wallet. Supervisory Special Agent Daniel Cho, he said. FBI. I supervise Agent Brooks's squad. Lieutenant Delgado introduced herself, then introduced Officer Reyes without hesitation or shield. The tone was professional, not warm, but that was expected. SSHO glanced at Maya with real concern, then looked back at Mark. We will need the body cam footage, he said. We'll also give you our report. Understood, Delgado answered. Our internal affairs will open a review. We'll preserve everything. Cho crouched slightly to meet Maya's eyes. How are you? He asked. Clear, she said. Sore. Do you want to go to the hospital? Medics recommended, she said. Then do that, he replied. We'll take statements there. We also need to talk about the courier. The word courier hung in the air like a dropped key. Mark caught it, and it hit him with fresh weight. A case was in motion before his mistake. The case was still in motion after it. He could not rewind time, but maybe he could help keep it moving forward. Lieutenant Delgado gave quick instructions. An officer collected names and numbers from the bystanders who had video. Another officer set out 2 more cones so the ambulance could leave cleanly. Mark stepped to the edge of the scene and removed his body-worn camera, powered it down as policy required for evidence, and placed it in a labeled bag. He sealed the bag and handed it to his lieutenant. Reyes, she said quietly, you are on administrative assignment until we complete the initial review. You will give a full statement today. Union rep is available if you ask. For now, stay with me. He nodded. Yes, ma'am. The words felt heavy and right at the same time. He would not run from this. Maya climbed into the ambulance with the help of a medic. She did it on her own power, but slowly. SSHO stepped close. "We'll meet you at Metro General," he said. "Short ride." Maya gave a brief nod and looked once toward Mark. "We can still fix the case," she said. "The subject will go to ground, but patterns do not vanish in 1 hour." She spoke like someone setting a clock, not like someone assigning blame. The doors closed, and the siren lifted, not loud, just enough to clear a path. At the hospital, the air smelled of hand gel and fresh paint. The triage nurse listened, wrote down the basics, and brought Maya into an exam room. A doctor checked range of motion, eye tracking, and reflexes. They asked about headaches and vision. They suggested a scan to be safe. Maya agreed. While she waited, she held the soft ice pack and watched the second hand of the wall clock make its quiet circles. She answered 2 quick calls from her team with short phrases: "I'm okay, hold the east perimeter, pull data from the camera near Pier 6. Mark arrived with Lieutenant Delgado and a sergeant from Internal Affairs named Rivera. Sergeant Rivera's face was calm and unreadable, his notebook was small and clean. He introduced himself to Maya and SSHO, then to Mark. "We will do preliminary interviews today," he said. "Short, factual, separate. We will not decide outcome today. We will decide next steps." He said it like a routine, which it was. Routines kept people honest. Maya went first. Sergeant Rivera asked clear questions: where she was standing, the direction she was moving, what she heard, where her hands were, what she meant to do with her left hand, when she realized a uniformed officer was behind her. Maya answered with the same clarity she carried at the scene. "I did not hear the full command," she said again. "I kept my eyes on the courier. I was reaching for my credentials to display them in case I had to identify myself fast. The bus masks sound. I should have widened my view for a beat, but I prioritized not losing the subject." There was no drama in her voice, only a clean line of cause and effect. Mark went next, in a different room. The chair felt too hard. The fluorescent lights felt too white. He sat up straight anyway. Sergeant Rivera clicked his pen once, then set it down. "Tell me what you saw and what you decided," he said. Mark walked him through it. He described the hand movement and the noise. He described his own fear of a late moment, left over from a different call months ago. He explained the choice to use a single, interrupting strike as taught for immediate control. "It was a misread," he said. "I accept that. I did not see a badge at that second. I saw a fast reach in a dense crowd. I did not intend harm. I intended to stop a potential threat. I recognize now that Agent Brooks was engaged in lawful duty. Did you consider that she might be plainclothes law enforcement?" Rivera asked. "Yes," Mark said, "but I failed to confirm before acting. The sound and movement made me compress the situation too fast." He said the last part with care. He did not want to throw the bus or the city or noise under the bus, so to speak. The choice had been his. The factors had been real, but the choice was still his. Rivera finished his questions and closed the notebook. "Thank you," he said. "You will be notified of next steps. Do not discuss this with anyone outside your union rep or assigned counsel. And do not review third-party videos until the formal review permits it." "Understood," Mark said. He did not ask when. He did not ask what if. He waited. Out in the hall, SSHO looked at his phone and spoke quietly to a woman from his team. "Agent Linear, the courier's phone hit a tower near the river, then went dark," he said. "He will want a safer handoff. He has patterns. He is cautious, not creative." Agent Lin nodded. "The Riverside lot?" she asked. "Maybe," he said. He's used it twice. If he believes the commotion was random, he will stick to routine. If he believes he was burned, he will pivot to a crowded mall. We'll cover both. Cho glanced at Lieutenant Delgado. We will need coordination with marked units. A visible patrol in the wrong place can be a helpful decoy. Delgado met his look. We can support, she said. We'll keep everything on the record. Maya returned from imaging with a printout and a small bandage where they had placed N4 for contrast. The doctor gave her a careful summary: no acute damage seen, expect soreness, watch for symptoms, rest advised, follow up in 48 hours. She accepted the advice and asked for a copy of the discharge papers. She thanked the nurse by name. Then she stood with slow care and walked back to the small conference room where Cho, Lin, Delgado, and Rivera waited. There, the conversation shifted from what happened to what now. Cho laid it out on a whiteboard in dry erase lines: courier's last known path, usual fallback spots, times he preferred, the contact who sometimes met him with a gray sedan, and the route that contact took to leave the area. Maya added small details in a quiet voice: a habit of palming a coin when he was nervous, a left knee that made him favor certain stairs, a tendency to keep his back to walls in open spaces. These were the kinds of notes that years of work give you. They seemed tiny. They were not. Delgado listened and then offered the department's resources. We can post a highly visible unit at the downtown mall and run normal patrol chatter there, she said. Nothing heavy. Just enough to draw attention. Meanwhile, we can keep a lower profile near the river for your team. Cho nodded. That helps, he said. We will not put Agent Brooks in the field tonight, he added, glancing at Maya with a firm look. Doctor's orders and mine. Maya did not argue. I can run comms and pattern calls, she said. I know his small tells. I can do that from a chair. Cho accepted that. A young officer knocked and stepped in with a printout. Lieutenant, here are the names of 2 bystanders with video, he said. Both are willing to share. One already emailed a clip to the tip line. Delgado thanked him. We will preserve those, she said to Rivera, who nodded. And we will move fast on the body cam copy. The topic of public release hung in the air. Would the sidewalk video hit the internet tonight? Would a headline frame the story before the facts could? Cho looked at Delgado. We would prefer a joint note to the press if this goes public before morning, he said. Simple language. Acknowledge the review. Emphasize that both agencies are cooperating on an active investigation. Delgado agreed. We can do that, she said. Transparency helps. Neither promised a perfect outcome. They promised clear steps. Mark sat at the edge of the room, not inside the planning huddle but not far away. He listened because the case had started at his feet and he wanted to help in a way that did not cross any lines. He knew he might be sent home on leave for a few shifts. He knew more interviews would come. He knew the word suspension might appear in his near future. None of that changed the fact that a team needed support tonight. He cleared his throat gently. If you need a marked car for decoy patrol, I can drive it, he said. He did not pitch it as a fix. He did not say it to earn forgiveness. He said it because it was a practical offer. Delgado looked at him. She waited for a moment. You will not run solo, she said. You will operate under direct instruction from command. No discretionary stops. Radio discipline only. If you accept that, I will consider it. I accept that, he said. Cho studied him for a second and then gave a small nod. We use mistakes to renew discipline, he said. If you can do that, you can be useful tonight. The words were not a gift. They were a test. Maya watched Mark's face. He did not look relieved. He looked focused. That was better. We can still fix this if we move fast and smart, she said again, this time to the room. The courier thinks in lines. We just need to draw straighter ones around him. She placed the ice pack on the table, sat down, and pulled a map onto her lap. She pointed with a pen, not with her finger. He likes light near water. He avoids the lot by the museum because of the cameras. He uses the pier lot when he thinks the city is busy elsewhere. Tonight, the city feels busy everywhere. If he sees a patrol near the mall, he will believe the noise is all about that. He will go to the river. The plan started to take shape. It was not dramatic. It was a series of clean steps with clear check-ins. Radios tested. Roles assigned. Times set. Delgado wrote the support pieces on a yellow pad and handed copies to her team. Cho sent a message to the bureau comms to prepare a short, factual line in case video hit the feeds before midnight. Rivera logged the interview times and the custody chain for the body cam. The hospital printer hummed as it produced a medical note for Maya to hand her supervisor. Small sounds, small tools, a lot of care. As they wrapped, the hallway speakers played a soft chime that meant visiting hours were over. The nurse glanced in and smiled politely at the busy room. People gathered their papers. Maya stood. Mark stood too. He met her eyes, not for long, just enough to say again without words that he was sorry and that he would show it by doing his job right from now on. Maya gave a single nod. Stay within the plan, she said. No extra moves? Understood, he said. They stepped out into the cooler night. The city was still awake. Far away, the river carried a slice of moonlight like a thin stripe of silver. Mark felt the weight of the coming hours and welcomed it. Work done the right way would not erase the wrong moment, but it could build a better line after it. He climbed into his patrol car under his lieutenant's clear eyes. Across town, unmarked units moved like quiet threads through the streets. Back at the hospital entrance, Maya watched the tail lights blink and then turned to join her team at the command table they had set up near the nurses' station. The next chapter would not wait for perfect feelings. It would wait for firm steps. And that was exactly what they were about to take. The review began in a quiet room with gray walls and a table that reflected the ceiling lights. A monitor sat at one end. Chairs were lined up neatly. There was a pitcher of water and a stack of paper cups no one touched. Lieutenant Delgado stood by the door with a clipboard. Sergeant Rivera set his small notebook on the table and checked the evidence tag on the body-worn camera. Supervisory Special Agent Cho and Agent Lin sat across from them with calm faces. Mark took the chair nearest the screen. He kept his hands in his lap. He felt the small shake in his fingers and made them still by pressing his thumbs together. Maya sat near the wall. A soft bruise was rising, but her posture was steady. She had a copy of her medical note in a folder, along with a slim stack of forms. Rivera connected the camera to a cable and brought up the recording. We will watch at normal speed, he said. We will stop at key points. He did not add any speech about fairness or process. He did not need to. The room itself carried that weight. The video began with sidewalk noise and a tilted view of the cafe window. The little leaf pattern in a cup of coffee glowed for a second, then slid away as the camera moved. The sound was grainy, full of engines and footsteps. Mark heard his own voice call out, "Ma'am. Stop." Then the bus's engine rose like a wall of air. The words broke apart and scattered. The camera angle showed a shoulder, a crowd, a swing of sun across glass. It showed Maya's left hand move toward her jacket. It showed Mark closing distance at a diagonal, as he had been trained to do. The next beats were short and sharp. Even knowing what would happen, he felt surprise when the movement arrived. He watched himself make the decision that had already been made. He did not look away. Rivera paused the video and let the room be quiet. Delgado read from a printed page. Policy, she said simply. Use of force. Identification. Threat assessment. De-escalation. She did not read the entire manual. She read the parts that mattered here. Each sentence sounded like a road sign on a highway that someone had driven too fast. Cho followed with a short note from the federal side: plainclothes identification practices, surveillance priorities, when agents display credentials, and how street noise can disrupt mutual understanding. It was not an excuse. It was context. Maya leaned forward and pointed at the paused frame. "Here," she said, using a capped pen so she would not touch the screen. "This is the moment I touched the credential case. I was going to lift it up. My plan was to flash, then keep moving if the subject kept moving. I did not widen my view to check for a uniform. I was fixed on the courier." Her voice held no anger. It also held no softness. She was doing what the room was doing, naming facts in a straight line. Rivera played the clip again and then set it side by side with a bystander video from across the street. The second angle added a different view. It showed the bus blocking half the scene. It showed Maya's hand movement from the front, which looked less like a reach into a jacket and more like a reach into a pocket near the opening. It also showed the courier's head turning at the exact moment Mark spoke, as if the sound was clear to him and not to Maya. The city was loud, but it was not equally loud to everyone. "Street geometry," Lynn said, circling a spot on a printout with a pencil. "The bus sat right here. The sidewalk narrowed near the cafe planters. Reflections off the glass put bright strips into the field of view. These are small, but they all matter." She traced an arrow that showed the courier's line east. "He used the noise to his advantage," she added. Mark felt each piece enter his mind and find a place. He saw how the view from his eyes had been true and incomplete at the same time. He saw how the view from Maya's eyes had been true and incomplete too. He saw how the bus acted like a moving wall between two people trying to understand each other in a second and failing. He thought about the training phrase they used at the academy: slow is smooth, smooth is fast, and how, in that moment, he had not slowed his mind even for a breath. Rivera turned off the monitor. "Thank you," he said. He wrote a time-stamp in his notebook and closed it. "We will gather the rest of the statements and camera files. We will conduct a scene visit in the morning for measurements. Officer Reyes, you are on administrative duty until preliminary findings are issued. Agent Brooks, your office will handle the federal side and share their notes." He stood and the chairs scraped softly as everyone did the same. The room took a breath as if it had lungs. Delgado dismissed the group but asked Mark to stay. The others left with quiet nods. Maya paused in the doorway and gave Mark a brief look that held two things at once: the memory of pain and the choice to keep moving. Then she was gone. Delgado sat, and Mark sat again. "I've read your file," she said. "You have good community work. You also have a heavy overtime load. That cannot be a secret to yourself anymore." She looked him in the eye, not unkindly. "How much sleep last night?" 4 hours, he said. "How many the night before?" "About 5. She wrote nothing down. "After this review, we will look at your schedule. For now, you will assist command with paperwork and coordination. No field decisions." "Understood." "Understood," he said. When they were done, Mark walked to his locker and put his hat on the top shelf. He looked at the small photos he kept taped inside: a neighborhood street fair where he had fixed a kid's bike chain, a dog he had coaxed out from under a porch during a storm, a quiet picture of a sunrise taken from the steps of the station. He did not add a new photo. He did not move the old ones. He closed the locker and sat on the bench for a minute longer than he planned, counting his breaths until they felt even again. Across town, Maya sat at a simple desk in a small office they had set aside for her at the hospital command post. The lamp cast a warm circle on the paper in front of her. She wrote in clean lines: time, place, sequence, action, result. She did not leave out the part where she kept her view narrow to maintain the tail. She did not leave out the part where she did not hear the full command. She wrote that she would adjust tactics in future crowds to show credentials earlier when safe, and to take a half-second scan for uniforms before closing distance. She signed her name. She stapled the doctor's note behind the report and filed a copy with SSHO. Cho stopped at her door with 2 cups of tea from the nurse's station. He set one down. "We got an update," he said. "The courier's pattern is still there." He made a small call from a payphone near the river. "Old habit. We have a unit listening to ambient traffic. He likes the water when he feels nervous." Maya wrapped her hands around the cup and felt the heat. "He thinks the city swallowed the moment," she said. "He will not think he was the center of it. That means we can be the quiet etch." Cho nodded. "Exactly." Back at the station, Rivera collected copies of the bystander clips and logged them. He spoke with the evidence clerk, then drafted a short memo about next steps, scene measurements at first light, noise sampling at the intersection during peak traffic, a diagram of sight lines from the spot where Mark had stood. He added one line at the end: "Consider joint training block with federal partners on field identification in high-noise environments." He did not make a speech about it. He just wrote the line and moved on. Night gathered its corners. Mark left the building and walked the short path to the small park across the street where there was a bench under a plane tree. The leaves made a soft shiver in the breeze. He sat with his elbows on his knees and looked at the ground. He thought of the first time he had put on a uniform. He thought of the small rules they drilled into the recruits: read the whole scene, keep your voice steady, watch the hands and the eyes, and also watch your own heartbeat. He thought of the time months ago when he had been late by seconds to stop a man from hurting himself. The memory still pressed on his chest sometimes at night. He understood now that the old fear had been sitting in his pocket today like a heavy coin. He had brought it into the new call without knowing. He had let it pull his judgment toward speed. A text buzzed on his phone. It was a short line from Delgado: "Decoy patrol set for 2100. You ride with Sergeant Patel. Follow comms." "Nothing extra." He replied with a simple copy. He felt both grateful and sober. Trust was being offered in a small, controlled measure. He meant to hold it carefully. Maya finished her report and stood to stretch. She did a slow neck roll and stopped when the soreness spoke up. She picked up her jacket and walked to the window that looked down on the ambulance bay. The river was a dark line in the distance, catching light like a piece of ribbon. Her phone chimed. It was a message from Agent Lin: "Camera at Pier 6 is live. Subtle movement at the lot entrance. Might be nothing. Will update." Maya typed back: "No time stamp. Watch for gray sedan." She closed her eyes for one slow count of 5 and pictured the courier's habits. She pictured the way he counted steps on stairs, always starting with his left foot. She pictured the coin he palmed when he was tense. Tiny details. They were like pins on a map that only she could see. In a conference room, Cho and Delgado drafted a short joint line for the press office in case the video went public that night. It was simple and clean: an incident occurred, both agencies were reviewing, medical care had been provided, and an active investigation was ongoing with cooperation between departments. No adjectives. No speculation. Just the truth in a steady voice. They agreed that if a headline appeared before morning, they would release the line and then return to work. The public could handle clear words. At the first light of morning, Rivera and a small team walked the block by the cafe with measuring wheels and cameras. The bus schedule pinned down the timing: a large coach stopped there at the same minute each half hour. On a second pass, they recorded sound levels with a handheld meter when a bus arrived. The readings were high enough to swallow shouted words from a few meters away. The numbers matched what the body cam audio had felt like to everyone in the room. Facts that had been felt became facts that were counted. Meanwhile, Mark sat at a desk near the radio room, updating a chart of patrol units assigned to the decoy plan for the evening. He kept his handwriting neat. He double-checked call signs. He marked each handoff time in red so there would be no gaps. Every clean line he drew felt like a quiet apology turned into action. He did not tell himself it was enough. He told himself it was necessary. Maya reviewed the courier's last 6 months of known movements. She circled 3 places he returned to when he was nervous: the Riverside lot, a cafe with low light, and a public library bench near a window with a reflection he liked because he could see behind him. She wrote a simple sentence on a sticky note and put it at the top of the page: he repeats because repeating makes him feel safe. That one line guided the rest of her plan. By noon, the initial review notes took shape. Rivera drafted a preliminary summary: decision made under stress, command not fully heard, hand movement misread, strike delivered, credentials presented immediately after. He added recommended steps: suspension to be determined after full review, remedial training, participation in joint identification drills, and a reflection statement from the officer to be included in personnel development records. Delgado read it and nodded. Firm and fair, she said. We do not erase. We also do not inflame. She signed the bottom and sent it to the chief's office. Mark received the administrative notice in a small envelope. He read it at his desk. The words did not surprise him. They hurt in the way a clean line can hurt, because it does not bend to your feelings. He signed the acknowledgement. He looked out the window where the sky had turned the soft color of late day. He told himself again, do the next right thing. Then do it again. Late afternoon, Maya joined Cho and Lin in a map room at the field office. The plan for the night was detailed and calm. Marked units would be visible at the mall with routine radio chatter. Unmarked cars would sit near the river at angles that did not look like a trap. A plain van with a ladder on top would park by a service entrance, looking like a utilities crew. Comms would be short and clear. No one would chase. They would wait for the courier to do what he had done before. They would let his pattern walk into their open hands. Before they broke, Cho looked at Maya. You are at the console, he said. You call the tempo. If you say stop, we stop. She met his eyes. We will stay steady, she said. No extra moves? The quiet line will hold. She placed her hand flat on the table for a second, as if to steady the map under her palm. Then she picked up her headset and walked to the comms chair. She did not feel like a person who had been hurt. She felt like a person holding a pencil over a very thin line and drawing it straight. Evening came with a soft wind off the river. Street lights blinked on one by one, and their reflections made broken paths on the water. In the radio room, Mark adjusted the headset, checked levels, and said, "Radio check," in an even tone. Across town, a patrol car rolled slowly past a mall entrance, just 2 uniforms in a moving frame like any other night. Near the river, a quiet team watched the lot where the courier liked to stand with his back to a wall. In the hospital command chair, Maya listened to the city's murmur and waited for a specific footstep inside it. The day of review had not erased the morning. It had given it shape. Now the work would try to set it right, not with force, but with patience and a plan. Evening settled over the city with a thin silver line on the river and a light wind that moved the flags above the pier. Street lamps blinked on one by one. Somewhere a ferry horn sounded low and soft. In the command chair, Maya wore a headset and kept her notes in a clean stack beside a paper map. She had a short checklist in front of her: time checks, camera checks, decoy checks, clear lanes, bystander scan. She tapped a quiet rhythm with her pen to keep her pace calm. Supervisory Special Agent Cho stood behind her shoulder, arms folded, saying little. Agent Lin watched the live feeds from 2 small cameras aimed at the Riverside lot. Their angles were steady, like eyes that never blinked. Across town, Mark sat in a marked patrol car with Sergeant Patel at the wheel. They rolled past the mall's front entrance at the exact speed limit, nothing more. Their lights were off, their radio chatter clean and simple. Unit 7, routine pass, Patel said. Mark answered, copy, routine pass, and logged the time on a clipboard. A few people glanced up from their phones when the patrol car went by. One teenager lifted a camera and recorded a short clip for fun. A security guard waved without slowing his walk. This was how the decoy was supposed to feel, normal, forgettable, part of the city's background music. In the command room, Maya said, all units, time check 2100 hours. Hold plan, no extra moves? She drew a small circle on the map where the courier liked to stand, back to a low wall, eyes on the lot entrance, line of sight to the water. She pictured his habits. He would step into the light for a second, then step back into shadow. He would touch a coin in his palm when he felt tight inside. He would favor his left knee if he had to pivot fast. Small tells, but real. Agent Lin, confirm the pier camera, Maya said. Clear, Lin replied. Entrance camera has minor glare from the street light, but the lot is readable. A call sign crackled. Unmarked 3 in position, came a calm voice from a car parked at an angle facing away from the lot. Unmarked 4, said another, from the utilities van with the ladder on top. No one sounded excited. The plan asked for patience more than speed. Maya listened to the soft hum of the room, the fans, the distant beeps at the nurse's station, the whisper of the headset cord when she turned her head. She adjusted the volume 1 notch lower so the city would not feel too close in her ear. At the mall, a small burst of noise popped up near a side door when 2 friends teased each other and broke into a short sprint. They laughed and stopped. Mark watched without reacting. He did not call it in as a problem. He did not step out of the car. This was not his hunt tonight. He kept his eyes steady and let the moment pass as a moment, nothing more. Decoy holds, he said on the radio in a quiet tone. Sergeant Patel glanced at him and gave a small nod that meant, good. Stay inside the lines. A few minutes later, the river cameras showed a man at the far edge of the lot, hood up, hands in pockets. He moved like a person who belonged there, not a tourist. He took 3 steps forward, 2 back, then touched his left knee as if to ease it. Possible, Agent Lin said. Wait for the coin tell. The man reached into his pocket, rolled something in his fingers, and touched the edge of it with his thumb. That's him, Maya said softly. She did not raise her voice or speed her words. All river units, possible subject present. Hold positions. Watch for the gray sedan. The man did not rush. He walked the lot's edge like a person checking the tide. He kept his back to the low wall. He looked at his reflection in a dark window, not for vanity but for safety. The lot stayed quiet. A jogger passed on the sidewalk and kept going. A couple laughed near the boardwalk, then turned down the steps toward the water. A delivery truck rolled past on the street above and did not stop. Maya watched the small shapes move through the frame. No crowding near the subject, she said to the team. Let the picture stay simple. The gray sedan arrived without drama, just a car pulling into a spot and backing up once to straighten. Its lights clicked off. The driver stayed inside and checked a mirror. The courier waited. Plate reads partial 87K, Agent Lin said. Matches one of our old notes for the contact car. Maya kept the timeline steady in her head. The courier would not walk to the sedan too soon. He would make the car come to him, so he could keep the wall at his back. She took a slow breath and said, Unmarked 4, hold your angle. Unmarked 3, adjust 2 meters to reduce mirror glare. No sound. No doors. At the mall, a curious man walked toward the patrol car and pointed his phone at it. He made a slow circle, filming the side and the front. Mark lowered his window and gave a friendly, even greeting. "Evening," he said. "Hope you're having a good night." The man nodded and kept filming. "Any reason you're here?" he asked. Mark kept his tone light. "Routine patrol," he said. "We check on lots of places." "Okay," the man said. "Be safe." "You too," Mark replied. They drove on at the same slow pace, neither avoiding nor inviting attention. Behind them, the mall returned to its own life. Back at the river, the sedan door opened. A man stepped out cradling a small hard case, the size of a shoebox. He kept it close to his side, not swinging. He closed the door with a gentle push so it would not bang. He did not look around. He looked only at the courier, as if the rest of the world had slid out of sight. "We have contact," Agent Lin said. "Two persons, one hard case." "Bystanders?" Maya asked. "Too near the boardwalk moving away," Lin replied. "No one within 10 meters." "Copy," Maya said. She felt the room tighten and did the most important thing, nothing extra. She let the men act out the habit they trusted. The courier tapped the case once with his fingers, an odd little signal that they had used before. The driver of the sedan popped the trunk and walked to the back of the car. The courier followed, keeping his back to the wall. The trunk lid lifted and rested. For a heartbeat the lot held its breath. "Stand by," Maya said, voice level. She looked at the angle lines on her map and then at the live feed. If they moved too soon, the case might fall or the men might run into the street. If they moved too late, the handoff would be complete and the trail would break into smaller pieces. Timing mattered more than volume. The courier opened the case for a second, just a sliver, and then closed it again. He nodded once, a small movement. The driver reached into the trunk. "That was the window." Maya said, "Go," in a calm voice. Not loud. Not sharp. Just clear. "Unmarked units, approach. Identify. Keep hands visible. Utilities van, hold. No siren." The agents moved the way people move when they have practiced, not in a straight sprint that looks panicked, but in firm lines that cover space without noise. Two agents took the trunk side. One took the courier side. Another stayed a step back to watch the wider picture. Badges came out. Voices stayed steady. "Federal agents," one said. "Please keep your hands open where we can see them." The men froze, not in a dramatic way, but in a human way when surprise meets authority. The next second stayed quiet and orderly. The case did not drop. The trunk did not slam. The agents guided the men's hands into view and asked simple questions. "Any sharp objects? Any needles? Do you understand?" The men nodded. A pair of cuffs clicked in place with no strain. An agent lifted the case with two hands and set it gently on the trunk floor to photograph it before moving it. Another agent showed a small evidence bag, already labeled, for the phone the driver handed over. The words in the lot were short and clean. No one raised a voice. No one rushed. The river kept its soft sound, like a quiet machine running in the background. In the command chair, Maya listened for any hint of trouble and heard none. "Status?" she asked. "Secure," came the reply, the single word they had chosen in the plan. She let out a breath she had kept thin in her chest for the last minute and wrote the time on her sheet. "Copy, secure," she said. "Utilities van, you can clear. Unmarked 3, hold for scene protection. Patrol units at the mall, maintain decoy until release." She did not look up at Cho because she did not need to. The line they had drawn was holding. In the patrol car, Mark heard the word secure through his headset. It felt like a small light switching on inside his chest. He did not smile. He did not speak into the radio with excitement. He simply logged the time and said, "Decoy continues, because that was his job until someone told him it was not. A minute later, the release came, "Decoy units, you may clear at your next natural break." Sergeant Patel turned the wheel toward the exit lane. "Smooth work," he said. Mark nodded once. "Whole team," he said. "We stayed inside the plan." At the river, the scene became a careful table of steps. The men were informed of their legal rights in calm voices. An agent photographed the trunk interior, the case exterior, the lot surface. Another agent marked the position of one small scrap of paper near the bumper and picked it up with tweezers. The hard case opened under a camera. Inside was not cash, not something dramatic, but a neat stack of sealed flash drives and a small ledger with dates and amounts written in a tidy hand. "Clean record," an agent murmured. "No loose paper." "We'll see what the drives hold," Maya said into the mic. "Label each one. Keep the ledger flat." Cho stepped to Maya's side and placed a hand on the back of her chair for a second, not to hold her, but to steady the moment. "Well timed," he said. She nodded. "The subject stayed with his pattern," she replied. "The plan fit the pattern." She took off her headset and rolled her neck once. The soreness spoke up, and she respected it. "I'll draft the initial case update in 10, she added. "Lynn, tag the clips for evidence and pull stills of the trunk and the case." Lieutenant Delgado arrived at the lot as the last photos were taken. She did not bring lights or a crowd. She walked in with two officers, spoke with Cho, and then stepped back to let the federal team finish their custody chain. She looked once at the low wall where the courier had stood, as if to measure the line between what might have happened and what did. Then she keyed her radio. "All city units," she said, "thanks for clean support. Good discipline." Her voice carried no sugar. It carried respect. Back at the mall, Mark and Sergeant Patel pulled into the station lot and parked. The dashboard ticked as it cooled. Mark sat for a second with both hands on his notebook. He thought of the old urge to do something big to make up for a mistake. Tonight had given him a different lesson: do the right small thing when asked, and keep doing it until the line is straight again. He closed the notebook and stepped out. The night air felt gentle on his face. In the command room, Maya typed the update in simple lines: time, location, subject present, contact arrived, trunk opened, approach made, identification given, hands visible, no injuries, evidence secured, 2 persons in custody, ledger and drives collected, phone collected. She wrote one sentence at the end: "For the record and for herself, the plan emphasized patience and clarity, the outcome reflected both." She saved the file, sent it to Cho, and leaned back for a moment with her eyes closed. A soft chime sounded on her phone. It was a short message routed through official channels from Lieutenant Delgado: "Decoy executed with perfect discipline. Officer Reyes followed every instruction. Thank you for coordination." Maya typed a brief reply: "Appreciated. Please tell him, good radio, clean timing." Delgado answered, "Will do." On his way inside, Mark's phone buzzed. He read the line that carried Maya's comment in simple words. He felt it land not as praise to collect, but as a small, steady light to walk by. The river went on moving like it always did, carrying the glow of the city lights in broken strips that stretched and healed, stretched and healed. The lot was quiet again, just a square of asphalt by the water. In a few hours, a cleanup crew would sweep it, and by morning, commuters would park there without ever knowing what had passed. The case would grow larger in rooms with computers and whiteboards and careful hands sorting through digital files. But the most important part of the night had already happened. A team had chosen calm over noise, plan over impulse, service over ego. And because of that choice, the work could continue. Morning brought a pale light over the river and a hum inside the station that felt different from the night before. People spoke in lower voices. Doors closed more softly. A memo went out at 9, the preliminary review findings were complete. Mark read the words in a small conference room with Lieutenant Delgado present. The paper said the same thing Rivera had outlined the day before, but now in official form: decision made under stress, command not fully heard, hand movement misread, use of force not justified given the total facts. It listed required steps: suspension for a defined period, remedial training on threat assessment and communication in high-noise environments, participation in joint drills with federal partners, and a reflective statement to be included in his development plan. It did not dress the truth in heavy language. It put the truth in a plain frame and set it on the table. Delgado watched him sign the acknowledgement. "You'll start training this week," she said. "No shortcuts. Show up early. Ask the hard questions. And on time." Mark nodded. "Yes, ma'am." He did not argue for less. He did not ask for more. He accepted the size of the moment and the work that belonged to him now. Across town, the FBI office was a quiet machine. Technicians placed the flash drives from the hard case into write-block devices and cloned them one by one. A digital forensics lead named Ortiz kept a whiteboard with 3 columns: sender, receiver, path. As each drive unlocked, clean rows appeared with dates, amounts, and shipment codes. None of it looked dramatic. It looked like tidy numbers inside a thin font. But the pattern told a larger story. The courier and the gray sedan driver were not freelancing, they were part of a network that moved small, valuable items through busy places using simple habits: handoffs near water, schedules that matched bus arrivals, routes that kept cameras at a distance. The ledger's neat handwriting matched notes found in 2 older cases that had gone cold. Small data points clicked together like teeth on a gear. Maya sat with Cho and Lin in a case room that smelled like dry erase markers and new paper. Her face still showed a faint bruise, but her voice was the same steady tone as always. They built a list of warrants that needed to go out before noon. They drafted interview questions for the courier that would press on his patterns without pushing him to shut down. They contacted a federal prosecutor who had the patience to follow numbers across weeks rather than chase headlines across hours. The work took shape the way good work does, step by step, with care. By late morning, a local news site posted a short video clip from the cafe corner. It showed the moment of the strike and the quick exchange after. The headline was simple and sharp. The comments began at once, as comments always do. But the agencies had anticipated this. The joint note that Cho and Delgado had written the night before went out within minutes. It acknowledged the incident, said medical care had been provided, confirmed that a review was underway, and explained that both agencies had cooperated to make arrests related to an active case later that same night. There were no adjectives in the note. There were only clear sentences. The effect was noticeable. The story traveled, but it did not spin out of control. A second article appeared in the afternoon about the arrests at the river. It included a photo of evidence bags and a quote from a community leader who said that open information calmed people faster than closed doors. Not everyone agreed. Some were angry and stayed angry. But the center of the city's mood held steady, and work could continue. At the station, Mark began his training block in a room with padded mats and taped floor lines. An instructor named Jada set up exercises with sound machines that played recorded city noise: buses braking, sirens in the middle distance, crowds rising and falling. Officers moved through scenarios where plainclothes partners approached from awkward angles. The rule was simple and strict: identify first if you can, create time and space before force, use voice that cuts through noise without adding to it. They drilled hand signals for situations where sound failed. They drilled the half-second scan to widen a view before closing in. Mark missed a cue on the first run. He named it out loud and started again. On the second run, he caught the credential flash and stepped back instead of forward. On the third, he used a palm-down gesture to slow the scene and a clear phrase to set the pace. It was not flashy. It was careful. Jada paused him after a set. "What pulled you fast last time?" she asked. "Old fear," he said, honest and plain. "A call I was late to months ago. I carried it into a new moment." She nodded. "Name it so it doesn't drive," she said. "You still bring it with you, but you put it in the back seat." He wrote that in his notebook afterward, not because it sounded wise, but because it felt practical. Internal Affairs scheduled a sit-down for his reflective statement. Mark spent an evening drafting it. He did not try to craft a perfect paragraph. He wrote short lines: what he saw, why he moved, what he missed, what he will do differently, and how he will measure himself in real time. He included steps, not slogans: count to 1 before closing distance if the subject's hands are not producing a clear threat, use the palm down slow signal more often, if sound is compromised, move laterally first to improve line of sight, build the habit of checking for credential flashes in the first movement, name old fear silently when it appears so it does not pick the speed. He printed it, signed it, and handed it in. Meanwhile, the case widened. The courier, faced with the quiet order of evidence and not the heat of accusation, agreed to cooperate. He admitted he liked the water because the sound of waves covered small noises and made him feel safe, the same way other people feel safe near a kitchen radio. He named 2 drop points a few miles away and a contact in another city. Warrants went out. 2 more people were arrested without fuss in the following days. The drives showed months of careful funneling of stolen goods that had moved across state lines in tiny pieces so they would never seem worth chasing on their own. Together, they were worth very much. Maya prepared a timeline for the prosecutor. She kept it neat: dates, places, amounts, names, and a simple note on each line about which camera or witness supported it. She included the cafe incident at the top, not as a dramatic opener, but as the real starting point of the final phase. She wrote one sentence that mattered to her: errors acknowledged and addressed quickly can still lead to responsible outcomes. She did not put her name next to that sentence. She did not need to. A week later, Mark stood in a community room at the library with folding chairs and a table of paper cups. A small group had gathered for a de-escalation talk the department had offered before, but this one was fuller than usual. Some came curious. Some came skeptical. A few wore the look of people who replayed that video in their heads and wanted to ask hard questions. Mark did not arrive to persuade. He arrived to listen and to share what he was learning. He spoke briefly about noise and speed and the small tricks of the city that hide one person's view from another. He did not defend his mistake. He described it. He explained the training he was doing now. He showed the palm down slow gesture. He told them he would be measured by steps, not by words. Questions came in a slow, careful stream. "Why did you not see the badge?" a woman asked. "Because I did not widen my view," he said. "I saw a hand move and filled in the rest with fear." A man asked, "Does your department punish or teach?" "Both," he said. "A fair consequence and required training can happen together." Someone else asked, "What will you do next time?" "Create time," he said. "Make the picture bigger before I decide." He watched faces shift as he answered simply. It did not turn critics into fans. It turned some strangers into people who had shared a room and a straight conversation. That was enough for a start. When the library lights blinked to signal closing time, Mark stacked chairs and thanked people for coming. A teenager lingered and said, "It's weird to see a cop say I was wrong." Mark nodded. "It's also necessary," he said. The young man shrugged. "Okay. Good night." He left. Mark stood alone for a minute in the quiet room and then walked out into the cool air. On the federal side, Maya joined a short panel in an internal forum about field identification. She spoke for 5 minutes about the decisions small objects can carry: a badge case, a phone, a transit card, a coin. She suggested a slight change to how plainclothes agents carry credentials in crowded spaces closer to the edge of a jacket, easier to lift with minimal reach. She proposed a one-page checklist for pairs working undercover near transit routes, camera angles to note, fallback routes, and pre-arranged hand signals for uniform nearby and display credentials. It was not a rewrite of policy. It was a refinement made from real life. The room accepted it with quiet nods and a few good questions. The checklist became a small laminated card a month later. The cases moved forward. Indictments were filed. Plea talks began. None of that made headlines for long. That was fine. The point of good work is not the length of a headline. It is the length of time the results hold. In a different office, a vendor who had suffered quiet losses for months read the news and exhaled. He did not know the names of the people who had stood in the river lot. He did not need to. One afternoon, Mark sat at his kitchen table and wrote a letter by hand. He kept it short. He did not try to explain the city, the bus, the noise, or his fear. He wrote, "I made a wrong call in a loud moment. I am sorry. I am in training to do better. Thank you for your steadiness that day and for choosing to keep working the case. Respectfully, Officer Reyes." He sealed the envelope and dropped it at the station to be forwarded through official channels. He did not expect a reply. He did not write it to get one. A few days later, a small envelope appeared in his inbox with department mail. Inside was a folded note on simple white paper. It had 2 sentences in neat handwriting: "I received your letter. Keep choosing the slower, clearer line." It did not have a signature. It did not need one. Mark smiled without showing teeth and put the note in the desk drawer where he kept small reminders that made his days better. Weeks passed. The bruise on Maya's face faded and then disappeared. The riverside lot filled and emptied 100 times and no one knew its quiet story. The training block at the station ended, and a new one began for a fresh group of officers. Jada kept the sound tests and added one more, a clip of low music mixed with voices, to remind people that not all noise is sharp. The laminated joint checklist arrived from the bureau and fit in a pocket like a slim tool you might forget you have until the exact moment you need it. On a late afternoon, Cho and Delgado met for coffee at a small counter near the courthouse. They spoke about the case's next steps, then about the city's weather, then about nothing at all. Cooperation between agencies is not a headline either. It is a habit that you build with short, honest work days. They finished their coffee, shook hands once, and left in different directions. As a last step in the internal process, Rivera sat with Mark to close out the preliminary review file and move it into the standard track. "Anything you want to add?" he asked. "Only that I will keep the steps on one card in my pocket," Mark said. "And that I will read them before I start my shift for a while." Rivera nodded. "Good," he said. "Paper can help the mind stay honest." He stood, shook Mark's hand, and left. That evening, Mark walked by the river on his way home. The water held the sky in long strips, broken and then whole again, the way light always is on moving water. He stopped near the low wall without meaning to and stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets. He thought of the day the story had started. He thought of the night the team had chosen the quiet plan. He thought of the simple note in his drawer. He did not imagine a perfect future free of mistakes. He imagined the next call, the next small choice, the next moment when he would either rush or take one breath and widen his view. He chose the breath in his mind. He turned and kept walking. In another part of the city, Maya closed a file and slid it onto a shelf. She looked at the whiteboard with its neat lines and then at the empty space on the board where the latest names had been erased because they were now in the court's hands. She packed her bag and headed for the elevator. On the sidewalk, she felt the city's own steady pulse, the buses, the voices, the wheels on concrete. She touched the outside pocket of her jacket where her credential case now sat a half-inch closer to the edge. It was a tiny change. It felt like a good one. What remained after all the forms and meetings was not a grand lesson but a set of small truths, that people make mistakes and can still be of use, that steady plans can turn noisy moments into clean outcomes, that clear words calm more than loud ones, that respect is not a speech but a line of actions over days and weeks, and that the simplest signal sometimes carries the most weight, a palm lowered, a voice leveled, a breath taken before a step. The city kept moving, as cities do, and the river kept carrying light in broken, shining paths that healed themselves as they went.